The parking garage smelled like oil and rain, and something metallic that Tavia Cross had learned, a long time ago, meant trouble was close. She didn't stop walking. That was the first thing they taught her. Not in any classroom, not in any manual, but out in the field, on a different kind of ground, in a different kind of dark. You don't stop. You don't look. You keep your hands loose and your feet moving, and you let your eyes do the real work without making a show of it. It was a Thursday, 9:15 in the evening. She had a paper bag of groceries in her left arm, eggs, a carton of almond milk, 2 cans of black beans, and her keys were already between her fingers, not because she was scared, but because she was smart, and she had always known the difference between those two things. The Fairview Commons parking garage was on the north end of town, attached to a strip mall that had seen better decades. Half the storefronts were dark. The dry cleaner had closed 6 months ago. The nail salon still had a cardboard sign in the window that said grand opening, even though it had been there for 3 years. Tavia parked on the second level because the elevator on the first level hadn't worked since February, and she had learned not to trust stairwells she couldn't see through. She heard them before she saw them. 4 voices. Young. The particular kind of loud that isn't about volume, it's about announcement. It's about making sure everyone in a space knows you're there and doesn't feel entirely comfortable about it. She saw them when she rounded the support pillar near her car. 4 men, late 20s, spread loosely across the driving lane, not blocking it exactly, just occupying it in a way that made the distinction meaningless. One of them was sitting on the hood of a silver hatchback that didn't belong to him. She could tell because he had the particular posture of someone who has never once worried about whether something belongs to him. Her car was a 2019 Camry, gray, 20 feet past them. Tavia kept walking. Hey. She didn't answer, not because she was ignoring them, because she was counting. Exit ramp behind her, 40 feet. Stairwell door to her left, 15 feet, but it opened inward, and there was a concrete pillar directly behind it that would slow her down. Her car, 20 feet, but they were between her and it, and the angle was wrong. Hey, I'm talking to you. She stopped, not because they told her to. She stopped because she had done the geometry, and stopping was right now better than moving. She turned to look at them. The one who had spoken was tall, wearing a gray hoodie with the sleeves pushed up. He had the kind of face that had probably been handsome once and had decided that wasn't enough. There was a smirk on it that she recognized immediately. Not from this man specifically, but from a type. The type that had decided somewhere along the way that other people's discomfort was a source of entertainment. "You need something?" she said. Her voice came out flat. Not cold, flat. There's a difference. Cold is a performance. Flat is just the absence of invitation. The tall one glanced at the others and grinned. "Yeah, actually, you parked in the wrong spot." She looked at her car. It was in a standard numbered space. The number on the concrete bumper was 214. She had a receipt from the machine at the entrance with 214 printed on it. "I don't think so," she said. "I think so." The one sitting on the silver hatchback slid off it. He was shorter, stockier, wearing a red cap turned backwards. He moved to the right, which put him at her 2 o'clock. She noted it without looking directly at him. "You got a nice car," the tall one said. "What year is that?" "I need to get to my car," Tavia said. "We're just talking." "I know what you're doing," she said, "and I'm asking you politely to move." Something shifted in the tall one's expression. The smirk didn't go away, but something behind it changed. He hadn't expected that sentence. He'd expected something else. Nervousness, maybe. Apology, the particular kind of shrinking that he was used to producing in people. He took a step toward her. Here is what Tavia Cross was, that nobody in that parking garage knew. She was 31 years old. She had grown up in Decatur, Georgia, the second of 4 children, in a house where her father cooked on Sundays, and her mother kept a garden, and nobody talked about fear like it was a permanent address. She had enlisted at 19. She had spent 6 years in the Army, the last 3 as a hand-to-hand combat instructor, attached to a Special Operations Support Unit at Fort Bragg, where she trained soldiers who were going places most people couldn't point to on a map. She had deployed twice. She had come home both times. She had left the Army at 25 and spent the following 6 years teaching combatives at a private training facility in Charlotte, which was how she had ended up in Renfield, North Carolina, where she had been for 8 months, running self-defense workshops out of the community center on Tuesdays and Fridays, buying groceries at the strip mall on Thursdays, and going home to a one-bedroom apartment where she kept a kitchen garden on the fire escape, because some things her mother had given her she did not intend to put down. She was wearing jeans, a navy blue fleece, and running shoes. She had a paper bag of groceries in her left arm. She looked, by every external measurement, like a woman who had stopped to pick up dinner. She was, in point of fact, the most dangerous person in that parking garage. The tall one took another step. He was close enough now that she could smell the beer on his breath. Not drunk, just seasoned. Just enough to have decided this was a good idea. "You're going to want to back up," she said. He laughed. The others laughed because he did. The one at her 2 o'clock had drifted a little further right. The fourth one, who had been quiet the whole time, was hanging back near the wall. She noted him separately. The quiet ones required a different kind of attention. "Or what?" the tall one said. She set the grocery bag down on the concrete floor. Carefully. "Eggs. I don't want anyone to get hurt," she said. "That's my only goal in this conversation. I'd like to go home. You can go home. That's the outcome I'm working toward. Lady, you are in no position." "I'm in every position," she said. "That's what I'm trying to explain to you." He reached for her arm. What happened next took approximately 4 seconds. If you had been standing at the far end of the garage with a clear line of sight, you would have seen the following. The tall man's arm extended. Then something happened with his wrist that involved a very small rotation, and then he was on his knees on the concrete with his face pointed at the floor. The stocky one in the red cap moved toward her, and then he was against the pillar, one shoulder pressed into the concrete, at an angle that made him very still and very quiet. The third one came from her left, and she stepped into it instead of away from it. This was the thing civilians never understood, the stepping in, and used his own momentum against his center of gravity in a way that put him sitting on the oil-stained floor looking confused. The fourth one, the quiet one, had his phone out. She looked at him. "Don't," she said. He was recording. "I'm going to keep recording," he said, and his voice was shaking a little, which told her he was not part of the original plan. He had come with them and not thought it through, and now he was in a parking garage watching 3 of his friends on the ground, and the woman they had surrounded was looking at him with an expression that he would later describe to his mother as the calmest thing he had ever seen. "That's fine," Tavia said. "Keep recording." She picked up her grocery bag. The eggs were fine. She had set it down level. She always set things down level. She looked at the tall one, who was still on his knees, cradling his wrist. "Nothing's broken," she said. "That's a choice I made. Ice it when you get home." She walked to her car, unlocked it, put the grocery bag on the passenger seat, and drove out of the Fairview Commons parking garage at approximately 9:17 on a Thursday evening. She did not call the police. She thought about it for the length of 2 red lights, and then she turned on the radio. The video went up the next morning. The quiet one, his name was apparently Donovan. He had his name in his profile. Had posted 28 seconds of footage on a platform she didn't use, and would never have seen if her neighbor Bet hadn't knocked on her door at 7:45 a.m. holding a mug of coffee and her phone with the screen already open. "Is this you?" Bet said. Tavia took the phone. It was her. The last 12 seconds of the 4 seconds, plus the part where she picked up the grocery bag. The caption said she wiled in far, and it had been viewed, at that point, 42,000 times. By noon it was 400,000. By the following Tuesday, Tavia Cross, who had no social media presence, whose name appeared in exactly 3 searchable places on the internet, and who had turned down 2 separate requests from journalists in her Army years, was the subject of a 7-minute segment on a regional news program, a thread on 3 different forums, and a comment section that had developed opinions about her that ranged from hero to threat to meme. She found out about the news segment because someone left a printout of the transcript under her door. She never found out who. She thought, briefly, about leaving. She had done it before, picked up, put down, relocated. She knew how. She had a go-bag in her closet that was packed with the particular deliberateness of someone who had learned to think about exits before she needed them. But she didn't leave. She went to the community center on Tuesday and ran her class. There were 9 people in it that week. The week before, there had been 7. The week before that, 5. She noticed the increase and did not comment on it. The class was called Basic Situational Awareness and Personal Safety. She had designed it herself, working from the curriculum framework she had built at the facility in Charlotte, but stripping out anything that required a specific level of fitness or prior training. The point was not to make anyone a fighter. The point, and she said this at the beginning of every class, standing at the front of the room in the community center, with its slightly sticky linoleum and its folding chairs, and its window that looked out on a parking lot considerably less dramatic than the one on the video, was to give people options. The first lesson isn't how to hit, she said that Tuesday, to 9 people who ranged in age from 19 to 73. The first lesson is how to see, how to read a room, how to understand what's happening around you before it becomes a situation. Most of what I'm going to teach you is not physical. Most of it happens before anyone touches anyone. A woman in the second row raised her hand. Her name was Odessa Pratt. She was 61, and she had come because her granddaughter had sent her the video and said, simply, "Grandma, go to this lady's class." "What if you're already in the situation?" Odessa asked. "What if it happened too fast?" "Then we talk about that too," Tavia said. That's what the rest of the hour is for. The tall man's name she had eventually learned, because things like this had a way of surfacing whether you wanted them to or not, was Kyle Brewer. He worked at an auto parts store 2 miles from the Fairview Commons. He had no prior record, which surprised her less than people seemed to think it should. He had not pressed any charges, which surprised no one, including him. She had not pressed any charges either. She had received 3 separate calls from a lawyer she had not hired encouraging her to reconsider. She had not reconsidered. Kyle Brewer had, according to a second-hand account she received from a woman whose nephew worked with him, gone very quiet at work for about 2 weeks, and then started being noticeably more careful about how he took up space. Tavia did not think this was necessarily a lesson he would retain permanently, but it was a start, and she had learned a long time ago to take starts where you found them. The class grew. By the end of the month, she had 22 regular attendees. By the end of the following month, it was 37, which was more than the community center's meeting room could comfortably hold. And she had to work out an arrangement with the director. A small, perpetually caffeinated man named Theodore Brash, who communicated almost exclusively through forward-leaning urgency, and who had once spent 15 minutes explaining to her the importance of fire codes, before she pointed out that she had, in fact, been trained in evacuation procedures under substantially more dynamic conditions than a senior center multipurpose room in Renfield, North Carolina. Theodore gave her the gym on Saturdays. She added a 3rd class. In April, a woman drove 4 hours from Greensboro because she had seen the video and then seen a write-up about the classes and then called the community center twice and been told there were no slots available and come anyway. On a Saturday morning, arriving 20 minutes before the class started, and stood at the back of the gym with her arms crossed in a way that Tavia recognized immediately as someone who had decided to be skeptical before they walked in because they couldn't afford to hope and be disappointed again. Her name was Felicia Drummond. She was 44. She had a daughter in college and an ex-husband whose understanding of personal boundaries had required, over the years, significant legal intervention. And she had come because she was tired. Not of fighting. She had been fighting her whole life, she said, when Tavia asked her after class while they were stacking the folding mats, but of fighting scared. "There's a difference," Tavia said. "I know," Felicia said. "That's why I drove 4 hours." Tavia looked at her for a moment. Then she said, "Come back next Saturday and bring comfortable shoes." Felicia came back. She kept coming back. By June, she had completed the full 8-week course and was helping Tavia set up the room on Saturday mornings, which was not something Tavia had asked her to do, but which she had stopped trying to prevent, because Felicia Drummond, it turned out, had an organizational efficiency that Tavia deeply respected, and a way of talking to new attendees in the parking lot before class started that made them feel like they were coming back to somewhere instead of arriving somewhere new for the first time. That was the thing about this work that Tavia had not entirely anticipated when she'd moved to Renfield with a go bag in her closet and a fire escape garden and a plan to keep a low profile. She had anticipated teaching. She had done that before. She was good at it. She had not anticipated what happened in a room of people who had spent years being told, by circumstance, by other people, by the particular accumulation of small and large experiences that wear a groove in a person's sense of themselves, that they were not the kind of people who could protect themselves. Something happened to a person the first time they understood in their body, and not just their head, that they had options, that they were not only the shape that fear had made them. She had seen it in soldiers. She had seen it in the facility in Charlotte. She saw it now in the gym at the Renfield Community Center on Saturday mornings, in a woman who was learning to plant her feet, in a man in his 60s who had asked, with extraordinary quiet dignity, whether someone with arthritis could still make the technique work, in a teenager who had come because her mother made her, and who by week 3 was the first one through the door. She saw it in Odessa Pratt, who by week 5 could break a wrist grip with a motion so clean and so certain that Tavia had looked at her across the mat and felt something she had not felt in a long time, the specific satisfaction of watching a person discover that they were more than they had been told. "You're a natural," Tavia told her. Odessa Pratt looked at her hands. "I'm 61 years old," she said. "I know," Tavia said. "That's what I mean." There is a version of this story that is just about a parking garage, about 4 men and a woman and 28 seconds of video that 400,000 people watched, and that most of them forgot within a week, which is the nature of 400,000 people watching anything. But that is not the whole story. The whole story is that Tavia Cross had spent 12 years, in various forms, learning how to move through danger. And then she had spent 8 months in Renfield, North Carolina, figuring out how to teach other people to do the same. And then something happened on a Thursday evening that she had not planned and had not wanted. She genuinely had not wanted it. She had wanted to get home and cook her beans and check on her fire escape tomatoes, which were doing better than expected for late October. And because of it, 37 people on a Saturday morning in a community center gym were learning something they had needed for years and hadn't known how to find. This is not a story about one woman being exceptional. It is a story about what exceptional training, given freely, does in a community. It is a story about what happens when someone who could leave decides to stay. Tavia Cross did not leave Renfield. She renewed her lease in November, moved the fire escape garden inside for the winter, and designed a new curriculum module specifically for adults over 60, because Odessa Pratt had sent 3 of her friends to the Saturday class, and 2 of them had knee problems, and one of them, a woman named Clothilde Bernard, who was 77, and had the posture of a woman who had always known exactly who she was, had asked Tavia during the second week whether there was anything that could be done if you were sitting down when something happened. Tavia had thought about it for a moment. "Yes," she said. "Let me show you." And she did.